Hey everyone, I'm Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show. On today's show, we're going to have Steve Jordan, former Vikings tight end. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about this Saints-Vikings rivalry. I mean, is it really a rivalry? What do the Saints players think about it? Steve Jordan can let us know because his son Cam Jordan is an insider. I mean, he's on the team. So stick around, and we'll let you know about that.
On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. One-of-a-kind opinions, big-name guests, the teams you care about every day. It's the Ron Johnson Show, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Show. On today's show, as I said, we're going to have Steve Jordan, former Vikings tight end. We're also going to talk a little bit quick. We're going to have a quick conversation about the Vikings offensive line, but before we do that, as we bring Sam Ekstrom in, we have a word from our sponsors.
BetOnline.net, Ron. They're the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Reviews and news of every league, MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and golf. They've also got live in-game betting content, scores, and podcasts. So head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And Sam, quickly before we get to Steve Jordan, over the weekend, and I've seen this tweet a bunch, Christian Darrisaw is the same as Trent Williams, or can be. For me, I'm a little bit annoyed. This is why. I feel like we're putting too much pressure out there because in the past, coaches could do press conferences and we would never hear it. Like Brian Billick, I don't know how many press conferences he's done. Glenn Mason, I don't know how many I've never heard a word either of my coaches said as far as like me going onto the TV and watching their presser or reading the paper. Now, every once in a while, if it was something good, I would get like a clipping from somebody like, hey, man, look what coach said about you in the last game or whatever. Other than that, I didn't see it. Now, all these coaches' comments are on the World Wide Web. They're on our phones. They're on the Twitter sphere. They're on the Instagram. They're on all these as Mike Zimmer would say, the book face. They're everywhere. So for a guy like Christian Darrisaw to see it, two things. Either it's going to motivate him to be like, man, yeah, okay, I'm playing well, or it's going to add that pressure, not just to him, but to those guys going up against him now. Like, wait, what? You think he's Trent Williams? All right, I'm going to show you. Because, there's old vets. Like I see Warren Sapp all the time getting upset about Aaron Donald, about people saying he's the greatest in the world. And I don't know if Warren Sapp's just bitter. I don't know what's going on, but he makes it his job sometimes to post Aaron Donald clips and then show, like, look at 99. I don't see nothing happening here. I don't see, like, look at that. He took a play off there. Because Warren Sapp wants people to know, hey, I'm the best 99 ever, not this kid, Aaron Donald. And so I don't know if that's the problem. I don't know if people keep saying he's the best ever. And Warren Sapp's like, nah, he ain't the best ever. Like, he don't play every play. Look at this. He splashes, but he ain't playing every play. That's what we don't need from Christian Darrisaw. We don't need players digging into that, and then every play all of a sudden, like, nah, he ain't Trent Williams. Look at this. Look at this. Come look at this, man. Come look at this. Like, that's what I don't want to happen. And so that's the only reason I'd say dial it back a little bit, unless they're just mentally trying to build him up to get ready for the season, but dial it back and let this guy go. And also could be, and I'll give it to you, Sam, maybe they're trying to take the pressure off of, Ed Ingram and some of these other offensive linemen, because we haven't talked much about the guards. Maybe the Darrisaw conversation is to make the rest of the offensive line feel like, hey, we got a Pro Bowl, perennial, possible Pro Bowler left tackle. We just need you guys to play well, and this offense can go. But that's just me. I just think I hope we dial it back a little bit, and let's get in week one before we start putting this guy, putting the crown on him at tackle. That's just where I stand.
Yeah, and that's media training 101 with, like, the PR staff. They tell these guys, don't make comparisons because typically it usually ends badly. And then the websites that weren't there, they see that little drop quote and they pull it, and that becomes a story. And I can't remember if it was Wes Phillips or if it was KOC. They said, I'm not saying he's Trent Williams, guys, but he has qualities that are similar to Trent Williams. Like, they were trying to be very careful about how they said it, and it still got pulled. And now it is a story. I mean, I think he's looked good. I think it's encouraging, but Trent Williams is different. I mean, that's a different story. That's Hall of Fame. And Christian Darrisaw is just trying to be a quality starter for 17 games. So I think you're right, Ron. Let's reel it in a little bit. Pump the brakes.
Well, it's Vikings training camp. It's Vikings. The season's around the corner. Like, this week is football week now. Sunday, I wake up and I get to do Vikings game day live for an actual, not wake up, it's an afternoon, but for an actual game in the afternoon. I get to wake up and have breakfast, and then I got to sit around and bite my fingernails until about 2 o'clock. But then we get to do Vikings game day live. Coming up next, we're going to have Steve Jordan join us, former Vikings tight end, because he has a lot to say about this upcoming season, as well as the Lions. I mean, what does he think about the Lions? Because Dan Campbell, former player, coach, is also a tight end, so him and Steve have that in common. See what Steve has to say about that as well. Here we go. Steve, man, thanks for joining me on the Ron Johnson Show. Just jumping into this, man. You've been all over the world. I've been texting you. We've been going back and forth. What have your travels been like this summer?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate and blessed to, get around a little bit. My son-in-law is Kasim Edebali, who is a former NFL player. He's an edge rusher. He actually is German, and he's born and raised in Hamburg, Germany. And so he and my daughter have now lived in Germany the last couple of years, just for part of the year, though. They're in Europe called ELF, and so it's been there for 2 seasons. This is their second season, and my son-in-law Kasim is playing over there, so I get a chance to go over there and hang out with them for a couple of weeks, in the summer, maybe a little bit more, and then get a chance to do some traveling that way. We stopped off. I picked up my daughter and the 2 grandchildren, brought them back because they got to go to school, and we hung out in London for a couple of days on the way back, and then I got back Friday night, and then I took off, and then Saturday morning I'm here in New Orleans now, hanging out with my son Cam and his family, because I had another grandchild that had a birthday party. So Glory turned 6 this weekend, or actually technically is tomorrow, but the party was this weekend. So that's my
So you have a daughter, is what I'm getting from this. You have a daughter.
Yes.
So your daughter
and so
married a professional football player. How
Yes.
was that, like, courting? Like, how was that?
It was really odd, to be honest, because Kasim, even though he's from Germany, he actually is an interesting story, because he ended up getting recruited to play a PG or at a postgraduate, what we call at a prep school. Coaches are now going over to Europe quite a bit to pick up talent, and whether it's track or basketball, that's probably the biggest impetus. But they're also picking up football players, and I'm surprised at how much the NFL and American football has taken a grip in Europe. I mean, the folks are really hyped about it, and so so Kasim ended up going to Boston College after he went to this PG year in New Hampshire, at some prep school in New Hampshire, and he blew up that one year, and he got offers from UConn and BU and BC and others, and he ended up going to BC, Boston College. Smart guy, he's obviously multilingual. He speaks fluent German and English. And so anyway, he ends up going to the combine, but he does not get drafted. So he comes to the Saints as a edge rusher and a free agent. And then so he's in Cam's room, because he's an edge rusher, and so he's in his group meetings and all that. And we tend to be we're very inclusive in our family, and in terms of when my children have all gone to play sports in different places, all their teammates are all invited to our house, and everybody stays, and we're like that. It's like family with the Jordans. And so Kasim was like family. And interestingly, he would come to Phoenix on occasion to train in the summer, because his best friend was one of his teammates from BC, which was Afani Momo. Afani Momo, if you recall, was a tight end at the Arizona Cardinals. And so when he would come to town, he would be like, "Hey, Mr. Jordan, if you're around, I'll stop by." And it's like, "Hey, Kasim, come on by, man." So he just hung out with us. My kids are all about the same age. They're all the same age, and so relatively speaking, and so they hung out. And then at one time he came, after a couple, 2-3 years, he said, "Hey," because he hung out with the family a lot, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Jordan, do you mind if Stephanie and I go out on a date, my daughter? And I said, ooh, Kasim, that's kind of weird, man. I mean, like, you're in the family, bro. You're like, you're like part of the family. You come to town, you come over, you hang out, you eat, you whatever, house is yours, And I said, that's like dating your baby sister, kind of thing. It was just kind of weird. And so he's like, man, no, I get that. But no, we're vibing and there's something there, I said, well, I got to tell you, man, two things. One is you got to talk to Cam about that, because he doesn't let anybody date his baby sister. That goes way back to high school even, And I said the other piece of it is that if it doesn't work out and it gets uncomfortable for Stephanie, I said, then you're out of the circle of trust, man. You're out of the family circle. So he said, no, I get that, but I think there's something there. And so I said, all right, bro. And so they end up dating. He talked to Cam. Cam was like, yo, man, that's kind of weird too, but it is what it is. And so they gave it a shot, And I'm thrilled to say, a year plus later, they got engaged, and then they ended up getting married, and they've got a family and all that, and it's awesome. And he is an awesome guy, and it's a real wonderful story. But it was weird for a while, and particularly for Cam, because you know how it is in locker rooms, right? It's like, yo, right. Man, oh, yeah. your boy is dating your baby sister, and you know how that goes. And so
right.
it was awkward for a while, but again, great news. It all worked out. They're married, they got a family, they're moving on, and life is good.
I was gonna say, yeah, that could get that locker room, that could get a little tough. But yeah, I feel him though. Like, that's the thing. If he saw what he wanted and you told him, yeah. I mean, he was willing to risk it all. He risked the entire family for his wife. So, hats off to him for making that choice, because some guys wouldn't have done that. They'd have been like, oh man, this is my friend, this is my family. Like, this is, hey, he's like, I'm gonna risk it all. But as we, you talked about your son, I heard you bring up some training camp, locker room and training camp and roommate stories. So going back to training camp when Steve Jordan was in the NFL, what were some good, or what was one good like memory that you have or friend you made throughout training camp being with the Vikings or in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, training camp, there's so many stories as you know. So, but what I will say is that, I think training camp for me was an opportunity to get to know some new people, and I remember I ended up partnering in terms of roommate with Darren Nelson, and Darren was our first round draft choice. My rookie year, I was a 7th rounder out of 12. And he put us together, and presumably because he's a Stanford guy and I'm a Brown guy, and that kind of thing. And we ended up rooming together for 10 years. When he was before when he left the Vikings, and when he came back, and we're still boys today. In fact, we did a couple trips recently, and that kind of thing. So there's some lifelong relationships that develop, and it started in that first training camp. And Darren was again, as a number one. He was all of that, and he was. And then, here I am, this guy out of a, small Ivy, and, who nobody knew. And yet we hit it off. And like I said, have been besties, for quite some time. I also look back at training camp and think about just a number of guys that you get to play with, and guys that I looked up to and admired coming, into the pros. Like an Ahmad Rashad. Ahmad Rashad's last year was my first year, and then just some of the coaching that you'll get. Les Steckel was that was back in the day when, I'm really dating myself now, we didn't even have a tight end coach. It was like the tight ends went with the receiver coach for a while, and then you went to the O-line coach for a while, and that actually had a couple inherent benefits to it, because it was just like your parents, right? Go to your mom, go to your dad, and then you hang out in the meantime, and each one of them thinks they're at the other one, and you just hanging out, kind of thing. So it was interesting, man. But like I say, training camp gave me opportunities to get to know a lot of people, get to learn from a lot of people, and also to test yourself. I tell folks in today's world, training camps, I'm not trying to disparage it, but it's like a little bit of a I'm not going to say country club, but I am going to say country club, because, back in the day, I mean, my rookie year, we did 5 weeks of two-a-days. And I mean, it's amazing. It taught me a lot of things about people in general and myself. You know, your mind will give up before your body does, you know, because at that type of pace, you know, sometimes we go 3 practices a day. But I mean, you just feel like, hey, I cannot do another, and we're hitting twice a day. You know, we're hitting like padding up twice a day. And it's like, I cannot go another day. You wake up the next day, you're tired, you're sore, but yet you get on the field and you do it again. And we did that for 5 weeks, then moved it down to 4 weeks. And most of my career was 4 weeks of solid training camp. And today it's, you know, 2 weeks, 10 days, something like that. Can't hit, you know, which is wonderful. Believe me, it's a good thing. You can't hit, you know, twice a day, it's every other day or something like that. So those are good things from a safety and player personnel standpoint. But it was interesting to learn a lot about, like I say, other people, yourself, et cetera.
Yeah, and they say tight ends are one of the most athletic, you know, players sometimes in the locker room. When you look at Kyle Rudolph being able to play basketball, you look at Irv Smith Jr., said he's one of the best hoopers. Brevin Spann-Ford with the Gophers, same thing, 6'8", but former hooper. Did you ever lace him up on the court?
Yeah, you know, I played a little bit of basketball, you know, and you're right. I think the tight ends typically are the most athletic, you know, position on the field. We're also probably arguably the smartest because other than, say, a quarterback, because, you know, we have to know everybody's spot, right? You know, so and in today's world, which I used to do back when I was playing, I was probably one of the, you know, the tight ends that was being flexed out, you know, and I would play the X on occasion. You know, when we had 4 wide receivers, I was in that package. So I would play slot or I would play at the X out at the wide. And so you had to know all the systems. And you had to know not only the pass game, but you had to know the blocking schemes as well. As a blocker, we have to know the defenses because, you know, you have to be able to read that on the run and all that. So short of a quarterback, you know, we know more positions than anybody on the field typically. So that's why I say that. And again, very athletic because you're expected to well, back then at least, to block like an offensive lineman. In today's world of specialization, tight ends aren't asked to do as much blocking wise, but and certainly you have to, you know, catch and run like a receiver. So that's why I agree we're pretty athletic. For me, I mean, I was a pretty good basketball player. You know, I probably could have played it. I know I could have played at Brown in college, but I was between my engineering program and football. That was enough. You know, I couldn't take it. But I played intramural and you know, I had a pretty good game actually. You know, could, you know, like I say, get after it and get on the court. You know, and hold my own.
So if you and your son, so Cam Jordan's your son, Saints defensive end, one of the best players in the NFL, looks athletic, but a lot of times defensive linemen go either way. Like Julius Peppers, defensive lineman, could hoop his butt off. Karan Riley, defensive lineman, could hoop. But then there's some defensive linemen, they're like, dude, put the ball down. If you and your son were to get out on the court, who has the better basketball game?
Well, I'm going to say – you know, I think all around I probably have better handle, but he's gonna win on a one-on-one. You know, at 290, you know, he can back me down in the paint. And a brother, you know, I lost weight. You know, I dropped weight after I got done. You know, when I was playing, I was about 250 at the end, and you know, I dropped down to 220 just so I could have better outcomes for health and things like that later in life, and be able to run and do the things that I want to do, which I'm fortunate to have achieved that. But yeah, he's going to back me down in the paint and dominate a little bit. But he's really athletic actually, you know, and even in high school, while you know he didn't play a lot of basketball, but he was a track guy, and you know, so from a speed standpoint, I mean, he actually ran an open quarter at 265, you know, and ran a sub, like a 56 quarter, you know, kind of thing, which was pretty impressive. But at the same, he also did the shot and the discus, and he was a state champion in the discus. So, you know, body wise, you know, movement wise, I mean, that's always been kind of one of his strengths is his athleticism. He can drop like a linebacker in coverage, and he can do other things. So, so pretty athletic in that regard. But he's got decent game. You know, he can shoot a three, and you know, and he likes to get after it a little bit. You know, and like I say, he'll try to dominate in the paint a little bit. You know, but when you got 6'4" and 290, you can do that type of thing.
So he'll take you in a 3-point contest, or do you still have him there?
Yeah, I'd have to get into it a little bit, but yeah, I think I could certainly compete with him for sure, for sure, in a 3-point, for sure. Yes.
Well, coming up next, we got the Daily 3. Steve Jordan's going to stick around. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. It's going to go ahead and bring Sam Eksterman to the show, my producer. He's going to throw 3 questions at us, Steve. That's as we have. I have 1:30 to answer. Then you have 1:30. There'll be a clock on the screen, and we're going to get this going. Take it away, Sam.
Steve Jordan's take on Irv Smith Jr. Now, he's out for a month after having thumb surgery, but we'll let Ron start. Steve, you can formulate your thoughts. What do you think Irv is going to do this season? We'll start with Ron.
Well, first, he's got to get back on the field and get healthy. When you miss time like that for a tight end, as Steve brought up, it's tough because you have to know everything. And I was about his size. I played for the Bears, and they switched me to tight end. I ended up getting to 250. And I was in that world that Steve's talking about. I would supposed to be with the receivers one day, then the tight ends the next, and then the running backs. I was an H-back, so they had me moving all around from receiver to tight end to running or fullback. And there was times where I was floating, where like no coach knew which room I was supposed to be in. So I'd end up being in the locker room, like hanging out with the kickers for a little bit or something, and then I go meet with the receivers. But yeah, for Irv Smith, he's got to stay in that playbook, because when you look at the offense and all the things we keep hearing about this offense with Kevin O'Connell and how guys move around and how they, guys are expected to know multiple positions, and you can create a route within a route. So, like for instance, for the fans, if you have a choice route, if the linebacker's playing you inside, you can break it out. The linebacker sitting back in the zone, you can hook it up. And if it's man-to-man, you can take it over the top if you don't have another route over the top. So for Irv, there's a lot of possibility. But when you miss time on the field and that timing, it's tough for the quarterback to understand in those choice routes and the things you're going to do, what your timing is going to look like. But Irv could be really good, but he's got to get it going. He's got to get back on the field.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, and for me, I agree wholeheartedly. And let me first say that I actually know Irv and his dad. Great guys, good family structure. He's just a solid young man. I want to say kid because everybody's a kid to me now, but but just really a good dude. Just solid. But when you look at from a pedigree standpoint, and the fact that again, big time college scene, he's played at some pretty high levels, and so injuries again, being out for the better part of a year, coming back, you have some progress and then you have some plateaus. But I don't know that there's many people that are more hungry than he is, to come back. So, and I get the sense that he's certainly willing to do everything that he can to get back and get ready. I had a chance to spend some time with him about a month ago. We took some kids to DC in Project Success, and he was a part of that, taking kids to DC to visit Howard and the African American History Museum. And I got a chance to talk to him a bit. And like I said, he is hungry to come back. So, and with the talent level that he has, I don't think it's a stretch to say that he could get back and be very, very effective this year, both in the pass game and the run game as well. So, but you're right. He has to get on the field and develop that rapport and get his head in that playbook.
All right, moving along. Tomorrow, a lot of people are very excited about the Detroit Lions being featured on Hard Knocks on HBO. Ron, I want to hear, number one, if you're excited to watch Hard Knocks, and just in general, your feeling about the Detroit Lions heading into the season.
I don't know if I've ever been excited about it, just because the way the Ravens, when I went to the Ravens, they had just come off of Hard Knocks, and the way Brian Billick explained it, we all just kind of were like, man, this doesn't seem fun. And so from that, and maybe that's like one of those things where your parents tell you not to go outside too much because you'll let the air conditioner out. It's just, it was thrown into me. So I just never really fell in love with it, because I feel like it takes away from the players really being, who they are sometimes, because they're trying to like act it up for the camera. They're trying to, do the stuff for the camera. But from a Lions season standpoint, so one, no, I'm not really excited to see it, but I'm from Detroit, so it'd be cool to see some of this Detroit stuff they throw in there. But from a season standpoint, looking at their schedule, coming off a 3-13 season, they have to get better. They have to. There's no way around it. When you look at their season, or 3-14, whatever they were, when you look at their season, though, you got the Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders, you got the Seahawks, the New England Patriots, and they have a bye. In that first five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if they lose to the Eagles, Commanders, Vikings, Seahawks, and Patriots, just go ahead and try to get that first round pick again. Because from there, it gets hard. You got the Cowboys and you got the Dolphins, Packers, and then maybe they can beat the Bears and the Giants. But it's going to be all about that start. Like, how does Dan Campbell get these guys started? They have played hard for him. So that's where I take it. Their first five is going to be the question for this season for them.
Steve?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely valid. There's another part of me that says, hey, it's the Detroit Lions. I hate to say it like that, but it just is, right? Now, Dan Campbell, he has stepped up, in my opinion. I mean, I'm impressed with his ability to, as a head coach, and I saw him at the Saints. He was at the Saints before he came to Detroit, and a good coach for sure. He also was a tight end back in the day. So again, that smartness that comes through, but nonetheless, what he does have is this genuineness about him that gets his players to play for them, and so that team, even though they lost a lot of games last year, they were in the hunt. They scared some people, and so I would submit to you that they might end up, frankly, surprising some people this year, just because if you get in a situation where you can take it down to that fourth quarter, and now it's maybe a 50-50 situation. If you can learn, and also teams like those, they have to learn how to win, and that's the other piece too. They haven't learned that piece, but this might be their year. So I tend to agree. I think they have a higher probability that they're not going to be as successful, but I think there's also this chance that they might sneak up on people, and they're going to play hard. They did that the whole year. That's it.
All right, I'm going to go off script a little bit with this final question because I got to ask Steve Jordan. Steve, I want to give you as much time as you need to answer this one. Your son has had to play your former team twice in the playoffs in the last 5 years. What does that do to your emotions when you've got, on one hand, your son, your flesh and blood, and then your franchise of 13 years meeting in the playoffs? What has that been like for you? Take all the time you need. I really want to hear this answer.
Right. Well, it does have some emotional trauma associated with it, just in terms of, you want both teams to do well, and overall, I always want my son to do well, and he's had a good run in that regard. But as I also tell people, when they say who are you rooting for, everybody. I want everybody to get it in. And I'm also, like I also say, I'm the luckiest guy in the stadium because I can't lose, right? So if the Saints win and my son wins, hey, they get to go on. That's a win. If the Vikings win and they move on, that's a win. So I'm pretty lucky in that regard. But clearly, it's an emotional piece for me because we all watch the Vikings, and my kids. The other piece that's probably low key is that my kids are Viking fans, because they remember the guys and the team and all that. My oldest son, Joffrey, is probably the biggest Viking fan in the house. But truth be told, and I know Cam may, I'll let him do what he do in terms of responding. But low key, he's a Viking fan. He loves the guys that he grew up watching. And he and Johnny. I love the fact he and Johnny Randall even have a relationship, and that type of thing. So yeah, it's always interesting when the Vikes and the Saints lock it up, and they'll lock it up again, obviously in London. We'll all be there, and we'll all see what that yields.
I was going to say, I was going to go off script there myself because, the one thing I can look at this Saints roster is pretty loaded now. When you look at Jarvis Landry, you add Honey Badger, you add all these pieces, you got Michael Thomas back. The only question mark is how is Jameis Winston going to play? But when you look at that London trip, and you alluded to that, so you're going down to London. I know the Vikings organization is probably going to ask you to do some stuff, maybe. But what are you looking forward to because is the whole family going, or what are you looking forward to with the London Vikings trip?
Yeah, actually, truth be told, I'm looking forward to a little time with the family, but not the whole family, frankly. But Cam's wife, Nikki, is going, and my grandson is going, and Tank just turned 7. He's a football fan as well, and I look forward to taking him, and spending time with them in London, showing him around a little bit. Not that I'm a big London expert or anything, but I just, I've been there and hung out a little bit. And then also to see the two teams, battle it up in there. I tell people, I was actually played in the first World Bowl back in 1983 when the Vikings then played the then St. Louis Cardinals back in 1983. It was a preseason game. And we played in Wembley Stadium, and that was pretty special. So, and then obviously for the Vikings to go back and play the Saints, now this is in Tottenham or something like that, which is, I think, is a different stadium, but it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. And then again with the season, because it's October 2nd or something like that. So you're starting to get into that mid, season time frame, and, things are not quite shaping up, but you gotta win games. And so it'll be important game for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I'm not looking forward to the 7 a.m. pregame kickoff. Like, we thought we were going to get the day off because last time we did, and now they're like, nope, Fox wants everybody up and awake, and we got to kick it over to Michael Strahan and those guys. I'm like, come on, 7 a.m. But no, it should be a fun one for you guys. We'll definitely make sure on the pregame show I'm going to make a mention of that, just to watch, like, Cam maybe interacting with you if they can catch you somewhere, with a purple and a gold jersey on, if you have like a half and half or something, like your jersey and Cam's jersey cut in half. I don't know if your wife or your kids or anybody suggested you do that, but we've seen that before with moms like Tiki Barber and Rondé Barber. I remember their mom had that. She had the half and half New York Tampa Bay jersey. So maybe that might have to add that to your repertoire, or just get some made and sign them and get them framed, and you and your son now have something to put out there for the fans. They might want to buy a Steve Jordan Cam jersey. So hey, I don't need any money from it. Just make sure you give me the credit when you guys start selling those jerseys.
There you go.
But that'll do it for the Ron Johnson Show today. I want to thank Steve Jordan for joining me. That's Sam Extra, my producer. We want to thank everybody that continues to download, subscribe, listen, and watch on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, and have a great day.